Scarlett Thomas had always believed that home was wherever her family was. With the night her mother Linda remarried and moved into a sleek, unfamiliar house in Los Angeles, home felt like a stranger's shoes. Beautiful, expensive, and impossible to walk in. She had come back from Yale for winter break, expecting peace and quiet. Instead, she was greeted by a house full of cheering relatives, clinking glasses, and the wide, polished smile of Gregory Davis, her new stepfather. Greg was charming. There was no denying it. He was wealthy, well-connected, and generous. On the night of Scarlett's welcome home party, he pulled out a gift that made even her carefully guarded skepticism crack for just a moment. The brand new V7 laptop, fresh off the production line, months before anyone else could get their hands on it. Working in the computer industry has its perks, he had said with a wink. Scarlett smiled politely. But something behind those warm eyes made her uneasy. She couldn't explain it. Not yet. Her best friend Darcy thought she was being paranoid. Her mother Linda was the happiest she had been since Scarlett's father had died, since the car accident that had taken him from them years ago, and Greg had been her father's business partner. He had stepped in, taken care of Linda, and given them a life most people only dreamed about. Still, Scarlett watched, and she waited. It started with a small lie. One evening, Greg told Linda he was working late at the office. His new software project was launching in 8 days, and the code needed fixing. Linda had sighed and put the dinner reservation on hold. Scarlett had offered to stay home, eating leftover pizza and working on her internship application for the governor's office in Sacramento. But when she picked up Greg's phone by mistake, she found something she wasn't supposed to see. A GPS location saved from the night before. It wasn't his office. It was a residential address in a quiet neighborhood miles away. Curiosity gnawed at her. That night, she followed him. She sat in her car, watching from a safe distance as Greg approached a modest house and knocked on the door. A young woman opened it. They disappeared inside together. Scarlett told herself it was probably nothing. Maybe a colleague, maybe a friend. But Greg hadn't been wearing his wedding ring, and when he came home later that night, he greeted Linda like nothing had happened. Warm, easy, perfect. The crack in his mask was tiny, but it was there. 3 days later, the news broke. A body had been found by joggers in Griffith Park. The victim was a young woman named Mary Harlow, 25 years old, from Porter Ranch. Police were investigating. Her neighbors had reported seeing a man visiting her house late at night in the weeks before her death. Scarlett's blood ran cold. That was the address. That was the house. She pulled up the news article on her phone, hands trembling. Then, the next morning, a second report surfaced with a stunning update. Mary Harlow was not who she claimed to be. Her real name was Irina Volodin, a Russian citizen, believed to be operating as a deep-cover intelligence agent inside the United States. Scarlett sat across from Greg at the breakfast table, watching him butter his toast and chat cheerfully about his day. He mentioned the news story himself, shaking his head and saying he hoped the police would catch whoever was responsible. "Me too," he said, sipping his coffee. Scarlett nodded and said nothing. Armed with suspicion and nothing else, Scarlett began to dig. She called Greg's high school. No record of a Gregory Davis. She called Harvard's alumni office. No record of a Gregory Davis graduating in 1993. At dinner that evening, a celebration Greg had organized to announce that he had arranged an interview for Scarlett with the Capital Internship Committee. She confronted him at the table. The silence that fell over the restaurant was suffocating. Greg set down his glass slowly. Then he exhaled and offered an explanation that was heartbreaking in its detail. An abusive father, a mother who fled with her children in the middle of the night. Years of moving from city to city under a new surname, just to stay safe. He had taken his mother's maiden name and buried the past. He had never told Linda, because he didn't want her to think he was anything like the man who had terrorized his childhood. Linda reached across the table and took his hand. Scarlett looked at his face. He looked sincere. He looked wounded. He looked like a man telling the truth. But something still didn't sit right. On the walk back to the car after dinner, a stranger approached Greg outside the restaurant. The man's face lit up with recognition. Scott, Scott Halligan. It's me, Billy, from Toledo, remember? Greg turned slowly. His expression was perfectly calm. I think you have me confused with someone else, he said. Have a good night. The stranger looked baffled. Greg walked on, arm around Linda, laughing softly about a case of mistaken identity. But Scarlett had seen the flicker, just for a fraction of a second, a flash of something cold and calculating behind Greg's eyes before the mask slid back into place. Scott Halligan. She tucked the name away, through her friend August, her high school boyfriend, now working at a comic book store, but brilliant with computers. Scarlett discovered something extraordinary. The flash drive she had found in a hidden compartment behind Greg's workbench in the garage contained image files, ordinary photographs on the surface. But August ran a detection algorithm and found something buried inside the pixel data, a hidden computer code embedded invisibly within the images themselves. Steganography, a spy's trick. The code contained file numbers, references, and one name that made Scarlett's stomach drop: Digital Forge, her father's company, the company Greg now ran. Before they could analyze it further, the computer began wiping itself. The flash drive self-destructed its contents. Someone had booby-trapped the files to destroy any evidence the moment they were accessed. Whatever Greg was hiding, he had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure it stayed hidden. Scarlett found the envelope tucked deep in the garage, behind an old shelf. Inside was a background check, ordered by her father, months before his death. The results were 3 lines long and devastating. Gregory Davis had died 30 years ago. He was 2 years old when he passed. Someone had stolen the identity of a dead child, built an entirely new life around it, and used that false persona to embed himself inside one of the most sensitive technology companies in the country. And if her father had discovered the truth? Scarlett thought about the car accident, the one that had killed him on a quiet night, on a road he drove every day, the one that had seemed so random, so senseless. Maybe it hadn't been an accident at all. Using August's access, Scarlett broke into Greg's office files. What she found confirmed everything. Digital Forge had developed a new, revolutionary piece of network security software for the NSA, the National Security Agency. The program was called Cerberus. Once deployed, it would give its administrator backdoor access to the entire NSA database. Every classified file, every operation, every secret the United States government had ever tried to protect. The launch was scheduled for that day. Scarlett called the FBI. She spoke to an agent named Everett, described everything she had: the stolen identity, the dead woman, the hidden code, the program. The agent told her to bring everything she had to the federal office immediately. She hung up and looked at August. I hope you know what you're doing, he said. Me too, she whispered. Greg was always one step ahead. When Scarlett rushed to her mother's office to warn her, Greg appeared minutes later, as if he had known exactly where she would go. She realized with a sickening clarity that the phone, the brand new V7 laptop he had given her as a gift, it wasn't just a present, it was a leash. He had been tracking her every move, listening to every call since the moment she arrived home. And Darcy, who had been helping Scarlett, who had gone to the house to warn her. Darcy, whose bracelet Scarlett found on the garage floor. Darcy, whose car had suffered brake failure on the way home from work. It hadn't been an accident. Darcy had been murdered to silence her. It all ended in the house. Linda had been lured back home under the pretense of an urgent message from Greg. Scarlett arrived moments later. The confrontation was brutal and desperate. Greg, stripped of his mask at last, cold and methodical, demanding the bag of evidence and confessing without remorse. He wasn't Gregory Davis. He had never been Gregory Davis. He was a deep-cover Russian operative who had spent years building a false life, marrying an unsuspecting woman, befriending her late husband, and then eliminating him when the man got too close to the truth, all in service of a mission to compromise the most powerful intelligence network in the world. "Do you even love me?" Linda whispered, tears streaming down her face. Greg looked at her for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his phone, spoke one quiet phrase in Russian, and whispered two words in English. "Do svidaniya," goodbye. But before he could escape, August arrived. A struggle broke out. The hard drive containing the Cerberus upload was smashed. The program never reached the NSA servers. Years of carefully constructed espionage unraveled in a matter of seconds by a college girl home for winter break and a boy who sold comic books. A single gunshot ended the standoff. Greg Davis, the man who had never really existed, was gone.